Hello again, everybody. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about animal domestication and germs. All right, so your learning target for today is that you can describe when and how humans began to domesticate wild plants and animals and develop agricultural societies. So we talked about plants and agriculture before. We are going to talk about animals next, because who doesn't love puppies? All right, so here's your job. You're going to watch the Ed puzzle. You're going to answer the questions, just like the last few times. Any questions I ask you today will show up in blue in my um, Google Slides. And anything that is in the study guide will most likely show up in red text. If you have any questions, please email me or come to my office hours Thursday and Friday from noon to 1. Yay. All right, your first question. So which animals were domesticated first? So we talked about plants last time. Now we're going to talk about animals. So whatever you think is the first, like if you think like llamas were the first, okay, you'd put like C first on your choices. So your choices are horse, dog, llama, camel, sheep, goat, cow, and pig. Again, I am not grading for right or wrong answers. Just try your best. All right. Yes. Dogs are number one. They were the first ones to be domesticated by humans, and that was about 10,000 BCE. So the interesting thing about dog domestication is that it happened in two different places. First of all, in Southwest Asia and China, but also all the way in North America as well. The next ones that were domesticated would be sheep, goat, and pig. Those are about 8,000 BCE. Sheep and goat are specific to Southwest Asia, as pigs were China and Southwest Asia. Next up, we got cows. They were about 6,000 BCE, and they come from about Southwest Asia, India, and North Africa. And then we have the horse, which actually came from Ukraine. We'll talk about horses with the Mongols later, and probably the Egyptians too, maybe. Then we have the llamas. So llamas are like, besides the dogs, they're kind of like the only other ones in the Americas that were domesticated. They were domesticated in the Andes mountain region in South America. And then D would be the camel, which was about 2,500 BCE in Central Asia and Arabia. All right, so let's back up just a second. What does domestication even mean? I never really defined it. I realized that. So let's define it now. The process of taming an animal and keeping it as a pet or on a farm. That's what domestication means. It can also apply to like plants too, like we talked about last time. But today we're talking about animals. So there are 5 unique qualities that humans look for when domesticating animals. Okay. So the first thing that like early humans looked for um, were food growth. Okay, so animals um, still today can be used for food. Usually there's a 10-to-1 ratio. So for every 10 pounds of food an animal eats, it should gain about a pound. So humans were looking for that. They also want animals that grow and mature very quickly. So it must grow to roughly about an adult size in a year, and also not be really picky eaters. Okay, like goats. Goats are not picky eaters. Um, yeah, so they can live off of a variety of foods. Another quality is reproduction. Okay, so the animal has to feel comfortable reproducing under human care. I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it really is if you think about like at zoos and stuff. They also have to have a short reproduction ritual and cycle, like pigs. And they also, oh, the next quality would be submission. These animals need to allow humans to have control of their social hierarchy as well. For example, dogs. And the last quality is that they're not so dangerous. So domesticating lions with strong jaws and sharp claws is probably not the best idea. Um, and yes, I know that cows can kick very hard and pigs can be very, very mean. Um, but they don't have crazy razor sharp claws. All right, onwards. So here's my next question for you. So, why do you think humans wanted to be domesticated or wanted to domesticate dogs? And why would dogs want to be domesticated by humans? I know this is a hard one. Take your time, no right or wrong. So I actually do have an answer for you on this one. It's kind of a long story, so I'll try to make it short. And please don't actually write this all down in your study guide. That would be like overkill. Like just summarize it. All right, so humans hunt in a large group, right? Cool. So they would have leftover meat. Wolves and wild canines smell that meat, and then the canines eat the leftover meat and carcasses. And the canines were like, hey, if we follow these humans, maybe we'll get more meat. So then the canines kept following the humans and getting more scrap meat. And then the humans intentionally start feeding canines. They're like, hey, these like cool canine things are walking around. Like maybe what happened if we feed them? What would happen? So then canines in return helped with hunting. And then that starts the process where like humans started selective breeding them, and the canines get the features like more childlike, like different fur coats, smaller faces, smaller bodies, and then eventually those canines turn into what we now know as dogs. Isn't that nice? Okay, so next up on the next slide is going to be a picture of a house in ancient Israel. So, what you're going to do on this Ed puzzle is you're going to take a moment to look at the picture, and then you're going to answer in the Ed puzzle at least three things you notice about the house. And don't just be like, there's a wall or it has a floor. Like, yeah, I know that. Like, dig a little deeper. All right, so here are the things that I noticed. So, first of all, there is kind of like a little door for the animals to get out, but the primary entrance and exit through this house is on the second floor. So you have to like crawl up the ladder and crawl down the ladder every time you want to go outside. You'll see on the top floor too, it's kind of like the living space, maybe where like families would eat their meals. Um, there are not a lot of windows in here. Like there's a few tiny windows. That's about it. So not a lot of airflow. Uh, and then it kind of gets concerning after this. So then there's like pottery and like cooking utensils on the lowest level, which is cool, but also like the sheep is right there. And what do sheep do? They poop right by your cooking utensils. Very nice. So, there's not a lot of windows for airflow. There's no main entrance, really, like besides the roof thing for airflow. The animals next are next to the cooking and the food area. So, what do you think is going to happen to these ancient humans? Germs. Germs happen. It's fun. All right, so how are most germs spread today? The first thing would be poor hygiene. Yes. Also, feces, airborne, of course, and also contaminated foods like romaine lettuce, which is always on recall. Okay, so in hunter-gatherer societies, I mean, they had problems with like getting sick and stuff, but it wasn't quite to this extent that these early agricultural humans are. So in hunter-gatherer societies, humans would move constantly, okay? So they would like do their business, then walk on. But if you live in a house, you can't quite just do that. So in farming societies like towns and cities, feces was often left in the streets. So you got to remember, there was no sewer irrigation. That comes a little bit later. It does happen in ancient times, but not quite yet. Also, animal and humans are walking in the poop as they're going to and from their house. Poop is getting in the food. That's terrible. And you're like, oh, well, you could just wash it off. No, you can't because there's no running water. Sad. All right, so farmers use feces as fertilizers. Yeah, that still happens today. Totally cool. Um, but back um, in the ancient days when they didn't quite know how to use like manure, feces would get on plants. Again, there was no running water, so you can't wash the food. All right, so living in streets in the feces. So not only was it just smelly, there were some really gross things living in there, like parasitic worms, ew, snails in standing water. Uh, they definitely transmit diseases. Germs of both humans and animals. Okay, so it's not just the humans getting sick, it's also the animals, and also rodents wanting the grain supplies. Okay, so the rodents were like, oh my gosh, that smells so good. Let's go get some of that human stuff. Well, guess what? They carry feces, fleas, and other diseases as well. Yay. So thank you, modern sewers. All right, now we're going to play kind of like a depressing quiz game. Okay, so I do not expect you to know any of these answers. Um, so just take your best guess. So, which diseases do you think we got from cows? Um, and there is more than one answer for this one. Do you think it's flu, measles, tuberculosis, or smallpox? Oh, look at that. It's measles. Tuberculosis, which if you don't know what that is, it's like where bacteria, germy crap get in your lungs and causes blood clotting. And then smallpox. All right, what diseases did we get from pigs? There's more than one answer to this. Um, Either it's flu, smallpox, pertussis, or measles. Look at that. Yes, from pigs we got the flu and pertussis. If you don't know what pertussis is, you probably know it as whooping cough, which can be really deadly for like small kids. All right, which diseases did we get from birds like ducks and chickens? That's right, we get flu and malaria. Yeah, so if you've probably ever heard of the bird flu before, yeah, it's literally the bird flu. And then also malaria, which you probably are like, wait, don't you get that from mosquitoes? Yes, you can get it from mosquitoes as well, but chickens were the first to give it to us. All right, what diseases do we get from dogs? Flu, malaria, pertussis, or measles? There's only one answer for this one. It is pertussis, aka whooping cough. So kind. Okay. Oh, we're not done with germs yet. So, looking back from the previous lesson, I showed you this map of how agriculture um, like travels, okay, or is spread. Okay, so we said from the Americas, it's north south, south north, Eurasia, east west, west east, Africa, north south, south north. Whatever, my hand signal is wrong, whatever. Okay, so not only was agriculture spread that way, but with traveling also spreads diseases. Okay, so a lot of diseases um, back in, I mean, like up to pretty much right before modern transportation of like airplanes and stuff. This is how diseases were spread. So trade routes along followed agricultural spreading routes. So with travel comes the spread of germs. Example would be in 165 CE, Rome, or I should say not Roman. Rome had the largest trade route. Um, it also equaled the biggest germ spreader. So back in 165 to 180 CE, smallpox killed millions of Romans. And there's also modern day examples. I'm sure you know of one. But another one is in 1991. Um, yes, CE, like not back in the 90s. Uh, a plane served chloria contaminated water to passengers in Lima, Peru, and then it landed in Los Angeles, 3,000 miles away. And then there was like a chloria outbreak. That's nice. So, in conclusion, domesticated animals give us companionship, food, and energy, but they also give us germs. Yay. All right, so next week, we are going to continue Unit 1. So, the study guide that you have access to right now is part 1 of part 2. Okay, there's 2 parts to it because I didn't get them done in time. So, just FYI, there'll be another like part 2 of the study guide. And what we're going to do next week is I think that we'll probably read and analyze some primary sources. We're going to learn what a primary source is, how to analyze a primary source, especially ancient ones. They're really hard to analyze. Warning, there's going to be a lot of primary sources in my class that need to be analyzed. We're also going to talk a little bit more about ancient cities along the Fertile Crescent. We're also going to talk about other ancient places, such as in South America, okay? So it wasn't just like the Near East. So we're going to talk about Quipu and Karl Supe, and probably other stuff too. I just haven't gotten that far in life. And then expect some sort of like summative for Unit 1. Probably some sort of test, but I'm not 100% yet. I'll look into it. Okay, bye.